What's up, guys? It's Alex the Magician here, back for another Heroes 3 tier list video. And in this one, we're continuing the unit upgrades tier list with the tier 2 units. So let's just go ahead and get into this, and do let me know what you guys think in the comments below, whether you agree or disagree and why with any of the rankings. All right, so at the very bottom here, we're gonna have the zombies, so the Walking Dead upgrade. And the reason that we're gonna have this here is just because this is something you pretty much never get. So the zombies, as opposed to Walking Dead, they do become more beefy. They get 5 more HP, increase from 15 to 20, but it also gives them the ability to disease whatever they're fighting. But the problem is that as Necro, you're really not going to be utilizing Walking Dead or zombies that much. There are some cases where you would, like for example, if you do plan on taking hives and you want to use these as meat for hives. So in that case, it may be worth it to upgrade them to make them a little bit more beefy. But in most cases, you're not going to be doing that. You're not going to be going for hives as Necro because you don't want to bleed away your skeleton stack. So really, you're just going to be converting these into skeletons. So absolutely no reason to get the zombie upgrade in pretty much like 99.5% of cases with Necros. So for that reason, I have these at the bottom here. I feel like pretty much it's a useless upgrade. Okay, next we're going to rank the Battle Dwarves. So not the worst upgrade. It's their increase in terms of stats is not great. So it's only +1 attack and +1 speed. But the biggest thing that they do give you is magic resistance. Their magic resistance doubles. So the regular dwarves have 20% magic resistance. These guys have 40%, right? So in those cases, like when you do need that magic resistance, like sometimes you may decide to Armageddon bomb something, if you do happen to get Armageddon. I've done this before, and you don't have a fire resistant or fire immune unit, then you can bring 6 1-stacks of these guys plus a 1-stack that outspeeds whatever you're fighting, and then cast Armageddon, and you have like a 95% chance with 6 of them to have at least one survive the Armageddon. So that would really be the only use case for the upgrade of these guys, but in most cases, they just serve as meat in hives or maybe conces or something like that, and usually the regular dwarves serve that purpose just fine. I did make a mistake, sorry, so their speed increases by 2, actually. So the regular dwarves have speed 3, these guys have speed 5, so that is a decent increase, but like I said, you're usually not depending on these as your power stack. They're usually just going to be meat, and for that reason you usually don't need to upgrade them because the regular dwarves will be just as tanky. Okay, next we are going to rank the Crewmates or Seamen, the Lizard Warriors, and the Obsidian Gargoyles. Alright, so as far as the Crewmates and Lizard Warriors go, they are decent upgrades in terms of the stat increase. So the Seamen increase their attack by 1, defense by 2, and speed by 1. So that's a pretty good increase in terms of stats. And also, as far as Lizard Warriors go, their attack increases by 1, defense by 2, maximum damage by 2, and their health by 1, and speed by 1. But the thing about both of these is you're usually, once again, not relying on a Lizardman or Lizard Warrior or Seaman power stack in the early game, kind of similar to the Dwarves, right? And usually they're just going to be serving as meat in your hives or, whatever else you're taking that you need meat for. And again, for that reason, you're usually not going to need the upgrade. The Only reason that I would justify an upgrade is if you happen to find a box that gives you the upgraded version, like you get, 40 Lizard Warriors or what have you, or like 40 Seamen, and then you want to upgrade your regular ones to make that stack even bigger. That has happened to me before. So in those cases, it can be justified if that's actually going to be a decent damage dealing stack for you. But in most cases, they just serve as meat and really no need to upgrade them just so they will die in whatever object you're taking, like a hive or something like that. All right, and as far as the gargoyle upgrade goes, the biggest thing is speed. So the obsidian gargoyle gets +3 speed. They also get +1 attack and defense, but again, you're usually not relying on these guys as your damage dealing stack. But the speed advantage is good. Some people even open up with getting the gargoyle upgrade day one so you can have faster scouts. I personally don't do that as tower, but sometimes I do get the upgrade, like when I need to, for example, hit and run the break and I need speed 9 or speed 10 units that will outspeed like enchanters or something like that. Or there's also a reason to upgrade them to be able to kite better. For example, if you don't get genies, if you don't have lamps. And in some cases, you can actually even abuse experimental shops with using obsidian gargoyles to kite. There is a technique for that. So in some cases, the upgrade is pretty decent, and the speed increase is the biggest thing for them. But if you are not going for those things, like if you're not going to abuse the XP shops, and if you're not going to, need to hit and run something and need that fast unit and you don't want to sacrifice genies or something like that, then, it's kind of questionable. I mean, it's always nice to have faster units on your scouts, but you may not necessarily want to waste a day on that build because as tower, you could be going for giants. You could try to build giants. You could try to build Nagas. You could try to build Mage Guild or something like that. So building these guys, to me, it's a little bit of a waste of a build in a lot of cases, unless, of course, like I mentioned before, you need them for like hit and runs or to abuse experimental shops or something like that. All right, so now we're getting into the upgrades that I actually consider good and necessary in many cases, or at least, they could be necessary. So the next one, the B tier, is going to be Storm Elementals. So the biggest thing about the Storm Elementals, they don't get a stat boost. They get a +1 speed increase, but the biggest thing is that it makes them ranged. The air elementals are not ranged, the storm elementals are. So that gives you a lot of potential to do certain things. I think there's even a way to abuse churchyards with them and experimental shops. I actually don't really know how to do that, but I've heard people say that there is the opportunity to do that with storm elementals, like storm elementals and ammo cart, for example, for experimental shops. But the reason that I don't have these higher, because, usually, like with my tier 1 upgrades tier list, I had gremlins as the highest tier because they became ranged units from melee units, right? So following that same logic, you may think that I should also place these higher, and potentially I would have, but it's not always a good idea to upgrade these. So in certain cases, you want to keep the air elemental stack rather than upgrade them to storm elementals. For example, if you're going for hives and you're depending on the air elementals, because these guys, the storm elementals, the dragonflies will just close the gap right away. They'll surround them, and you will not get to deal the range damage, and you'll just be dealing the melee damage with penalty since they become ranged units, right? So in that case, you don't want to get the upgrade. And also, there are certain other cases, like when you go for Consus, for example, and you try to burn Consus with Luna, but you don't quite deal enough damage to burn it. So let's say you're going for like a size 2 cons and you only deal like 200 damage with your firewall, right? That means you deal 400 with a double wall. So that means that out of 20 griffins, 4 will still survive, right? But if you have a decent enough stack of air elementals, like let's say 13 of them or something like that, you just kind of move them, firewall them, make a double wall, and then the griffins move forward, and you will finish whatever you don't burn with their retaliation and their melee attack, right? So in that case, it's not a good idea to get the storm elementals, because when you put a closed wall up, you do not protect ranged units. Whatever you're fighting is still going to move forward, and they're still going to close the gap even through a closed firewall, a single closed wall, because they're going to be ranged units, right? So with storm elementals, or I mean with air elementals, you will be able to do this. With storm elementals, you will not. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest reasons to not get the upgrade. And of course, there can be certain other cases where you're fighting something where it's better to do melee damage, like let's say you're fighting dragonflies, that will close the gap. Well, then of course, it's going to be better to utilize the air elementals, since they'll close the gap anyway, and it's better to be dealing melee damage rather than the damage with a penalty from the storm elementals. Okay, next I'm going to rank the Harpy Hags and the Magogs. So these upgrades are really good. We'll talk about the Harpy Hag upgrade first, because that's the last non-essential upgrade on this list. I would say the rest of them are pretty much essential, and you get them in almost 100% of cases. So the Harpy Hag is a really good upgrade. And the thing that makes it really good, so it doesn't really get a stat boost. It only gets +1 to defense. However, it gets +3 to speed, and it also gains the no retaliation ability, which makes them really good in certain situations. So for example, if you have a Lorelei start, you can actually do up to a size 3 experimental shop with upgraded harpies. There is a technique to do that. You guys can check out my Heroes 3 cheats video to see how to do that. So because of that no retaliation, you can do a lot of interesting stuff, and because of their speed, you can deal a lot of unanswered damage, and also because they strike and return, you can keep these safe. They're almost like ranged units, basically. The only problem with that is if you're utilizing them as one stacks, it's, you will not be able to take retaliation, obviously, from whatever you're fighting, so that your troglodytes or other melee stack can actually hit and not get retaliated on. So in those cases, it's not necessarily a good idea, but in most cases, it still outweighs that drawback, because you can also utilize them to get first move in pickets, for example, if you don't have anything like a dragon or an angel. And just in general, like there's even a video of 111 break that was possible before they imposed the 100 round combat limit and that was done with Harpy Hags. So yeah, definitely an interesting unit with a lot of abuse potential because of that strike and return and no retaliation. Alright, now as far as the Magogs go, once again, their stat increase is not great. Only +1 to attack, +2 to speed. And the biggest thing, though, is the fact that they have a fireball attack. So it is an attack that affects, basically works like fireball. And affects all surrounding creatures. And in Horn of the Abyss, they added a feature, or I guess it was the HD mod that added the feature, where you can press G and you can actually target the fireball. So you can pretty much guarantee to not hit your own units with a firewall or fireball, which makes it pretty powerful. So it is a good one to have, and if you're starting as Cult for Inferno, this is something that you get on day one in pretty much 100% of cases. If you're playing Ignatus, then you don't necessarily go for it. But with Cult, you definitely go for the Magog upgrade. Usually, if not turn 1, then really soon anyway. All right, and the top tier. The other essential upgrades on the list is the Wolf Raiders and the Marksmen. So both of these an amazing upgrade because it basically doubles their damage potential, right? So the biggest thing about them, again, the stat increase is not amazing. For the Wolf Raiders, they increase their attack by 1 and their speed by 2. And for the Marksmen, stats don't increase, speed increases by 2, but the biggest thing for both of them is the fact that it gives them a double attack. So with the Wolf Raiders, you get a double melee attack. With the archers, you get a double ranged attack, which essentially doubles their damage dealing potential, and it's really, really good. I mean, it's something that you get in 100% of cases for Stronghold. If you're playing Tyrxor, you go for the Wolf Raider upgrade on day 2. Just makes it a lot easier to take fights. You know, you deal a lot more damage. The only problem with them, and why I rank them lower than the Marksmen, is the fact that you need to know how to fight with these guys, because you really don't want to be taking any hits on your Wolf Raiders, so you really just got to keep them safe and maneuver them properly and take retaliation from whatever you're hitting, so that you can hit them with a double attack. Because the problem is, even if you finish whatever you're fighting with a double attack, if you do it without retaliation, or without first taking retaliation, then you hit them once, and then the enemy creature or whatever you're fighting is going to retaliate, and then you hit the second time. So that means that you will take damage, which you don't want to do. So you need to be kind of smart when you're fighting with these guys. So that's why they're a little bit lower, but still really amazing upgrade, double your damage dealing potential. What more is there to say about that? And as far as the Marksmen go, so same thing, only they are easier to use because obviously they're a ranged unit, so you don't really have to worry about closing the gap and taking retaliation and any of that stuff. So you just shoot down whatever is coming at you, and you just try to keep them safe, try to prevent whatever you're fighting from closing the gap. So, pretty straightforward, pretty easy to use, and really this is, I would say, even 100% of cases, you go for this on day 1. I mean, with Castle, there really is no other viable, like with Stronghold, for example, you can go for Gretchen, so then the Wolf Raider upgrade may not necessarily be as good. But with Castle, there's not really another viable strategy, rather, besides starting with Valeska, and that means that you go for the Archer upgrade in almost 100% of cases on day 1. So, but yeah, once again, amazing upgrade, double your damage dealing potential, lets you do a lot more stuff, like you can take Portals of Glory, you can take, much more difficult fights with them. So, you can abuse crypts, you can abuse churchyards, and many other things. So definitely the top tier upgrade from the tier 2 upgrades. Alright guys, well that is it for this video, so thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, if you agree or disagree with any of these and why. And as always, check out my Twitch stream if you want to see more English speaking Heroes 3 content, link in the description below, and I will see you guys soon. Peace out.